Welcome to this session of AIJC 2020. We have an interpreter, a French interpreter for the session. So please select your language, go to the global icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, click English or French, and then mute the main channel so that you only get one channel. Please use the Q&A function for your questions. Thank you very much and enjoy the session.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the African Investigative Journalism Conference, the virtual session. And we are having 4 panelists that will be discussing collaborative journalism and its impacts and effects in Africa and also the world. The 3 panelists we'll be having will be Moturayo Alaka, Jeffrey Kelly Lowenstein, Peter Musegwe. Start with introducing the 3 panelists. I will start with Mutura.
Hello, I think I'll just jump in. I think we lost Sharon. So rather than the introductions by Sharon, each of us can just go ahead and introduce ourselves. Jeff, you may introduce yourself. After that, Peter, and then I will introduce myself and we can continue.
Thank you very much, Motunrayo, and thank you very much, everybody, for being here. I'm Jeff Kelly Lowenstein. I'm the founder and executive director of the Center for Collaborative Investigative Journalism, or CCIJ. You can see our website at ccij.io. I'll show it during my presentation and put it in the chat. And I'm also the Padno Sorosik Endowed Professor of Civil Discourse at Grand Valley State University in Michigan in the United States. Thank you very much. Very excited to be here. Thank you, Motunrayo.
Thank you, Jeff. Over to you, Peter.
Hello, everybody. I'm Peter Mwesige. I am the Executive Director of the African Center for Media Excellence in Kampala, Uganda. I'm a journalist and a media trainer and media scholar. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Peter. It's great to have you. My name is Moturayo Alaka. I am the Executive Director, CEO of the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism. It's an organization focused on improving the culture of investigative reporting. We are based in Lagos, Nigeria, and yes, it is exciting to be here. Thank you all for being here. I'll just in a moment share my screen to go through my presentation. I'll use 7 minutes and then we'll go over to Jeff who would give us his presentation, and then we'll go to Peter. After this time, we would come back to ask follow-up questions, and then we hope to have questions from the floor afterwards. So just a moment, allow me to share my screen, please. Okay, so I was saying that so this is how this discussion is about. It's about encouraging the rest of Africa, especially those doing investigative reporting, to collaborate. And I'll be sharing from the work that I have done at the Wole Soyinka Center. Myself and the team at the Wole Soyinka Center, we have done for the last about 15 years. I'll just take some examples and I hope that it benefits us. Although I'm not going to be mentioning specific African countries, the highlight of my presentation is just encouraging journalists in Africa to come together to collaborate. It has benefited my organization a lot, and I hope that you can also embrace this. So here is in a snapshot the things that we have done as an organization. We have held 14 edition of awards, 12 edition of lectures, 36 trainings. We have supported over 300 stories, and we've trained about 200 and 2,325 reporters. And I would say very confidently that collaboration is the name of the game. Collaboration is the reason that we have been able to do the things that we have done. It is because we have always worked with others and we've tried hard not to work alone. So an example is our regulatory monitoring program, which is basically we want to monitor regulators' activities and promote proactive disclosure of information of regulators. Sorry about that. So in this program, we had 78 participants, 78 stories, 40 stakeholders, 14 mentors. The stakeholders there are a group of people, and I'll talk about that, who are not necessarily reporters, people from the education sector, the electricity sector, where the project was focused, who are experts in their field, who we brought in to engage with reporters, to help reporters tell more nuanced stories. And the mentors are people who help the reporters as they write their stories. We share the story ideas, and together we build a think tank around stories and help reporters deliver better on it. Again, under the same project, we had a collaborative project where we brought together 4 media organizations. My organization is not a news media organization. We are an enabling organization. So normally we just work with media organizations and reporters individually to do great stories, and we train and we support them in that respect. So we brought together these 4 major media houses in Nigeria, and together we did of 6-part series on electricity in Nigeria. We led the group of 6 collaborators, and from the last year Independence Day in Nigeria, we started to tell the story of darkness and what it has cost us as a country. And what we did was we brought these organizations together. We agreed on the topic that each organization will write, and then we all agreed on simultaneously publishing each organization's story. So when the cable published Daily Trust, Premium Time, and ICIR went ahead to also publish the same story so that we can increase the shelf life of that story. Some of the results that we got within 8 days of the first story that we published, we got a response from the regulator, who issued a 60 days notice to revoke licenses of 8 power distribution companies over alleged breach of market rules. After one of the stories, the transmission company of Nigeria, which manages the entire transmission infrastructure across the country, published procurement notices and started shopping for contractors to rehabilitate reported transmission lines. So we mentioned another example of success here. So together, because the stories were published at the same time, we were able to get some impact, mostly quite immediate impact, because the story resonated across the country. A last example I will give is on our Report Women program, which is, we were able to do, we have 53 fellows over 3 years. They did at least 53 stories, 53 leadership programs, and then we were able to engage with their media houses. What we got from these are very powerful leading female reporters who, when they started the program, some started timid, some started unsure, but they are all now a force to reckon with because of the power of networking and the power of collaboration. This group of women are female reporters, are some of the most generous reporters in terms of sharing sources and sharing linkages and sharing story ideas, because these are things that journalists don't want to do, but we are encouraging that to share because of the work that we're doing. So I am saying very confidently that journalistic collaboration is a force multiplier. We multiply our force in terms of support, sustainability, because things can be expensive, but when you come together, you can cut that cost. We can fight against misinformation so that together, we publish credible stories together, and together that are credible, so people can begin to protect journalists together, coalition, other media organizations collaborate to come together to protect reporters when there is an infringement on the right of a reporter or a media house. Media houses and journalists, we practically scream about it, and we have that force because of collaboration. we are also able to mitigate legal risk. So when you have a team of people working on a project, it is easier to across board, share what skills you have legally and protect yourself to verify and check the facts well before you go out. Lastly, we can also scale impact. So our impact can be better felt when we actually collaborate. So there are different ways that people can collaborate. And one of those ways that I've listed 5 of those ways that we can collaborate. So it can be just your story. This is your story, but rather than just go on the field and do your work alone, you can actually bring in other people to execute your own story idea, to share ideas with you, to critique your plan and help you to do better. We can collaborate with another journalist or group of journalists. So that means you are sharing bylines. So 4 people can write the same stories, and they share the byline, they share the task, they share the risk, the resources are spread out that way. Also, you can team up with other media houses to collaborate. So one media house can team up with another media house, like the Wale Soyinka did with the project I just mentioned. And then we can collaborate across borders. So from Nigeria to Ghana, from Nigeria to Cameroon, from South Africa to Zimbabwe, you can collaborate across borders on issues that bother particular countries or that are similar in your environment or that have links, like was done with the Panama Papers. And lastly, you can work with stakeholders. I really believe that this is a part of this work that needs to be better developed, working with other stakeholders who are not media people in terms of enriching the work of the media. And I'll talk briefly about it soon. So I developed an idea over 7 years ago, and I had some time to do it further in the last year while I was at Stanford. And what this program is, it is a rush, what I call the rush idea, report until something happens. It's a stakeholders approach to reporting. I'm saying that if sources are so important, then journalists need to include these sources, not just as sources, but as resources. So, and then you need to include them after publishing as advocates and to follow up on those activities. I will not have time to dig into the rush idea, but basically we're saying that a report should be the beginning of a conversation if you want change, and collaboration is that tool that you can use to ensure that your report has impact. So there are reasons why people do not collaborate, and I'll rush through the rest of the presentation so that I can give it to the next person. Some people say we're competitors, so we're both businesses. I'm a media house, I'm in this, I want to run as a business, and then this other person is a media house. Well, yes, we are competitors, but the reasons for our collaboration are more, because more than anything, the public interest is the overriding reason for journalism. The fact that we need to be the voices of the people, and we need to be the amplifiers of the voices of the people. So we do need to complement ourselves and collaborate despite the competition. And maybe during Q&A, I can answer more questions about this. Some people say there is no time. Well, I will give the way to collaborate to help with this question. So what are the advantages? You can leverage expertise. I might know so much about health, and you know so much about putting a great report together. Another person knows so much about distribution. So we can leverage our expertise. We can share the resources. So if we had to spend $100 for a project, now we are bringing 30, 40, rather than one person bringing all the 100. And then we can share the risk. We can protect ourselves and be it's not easy to sue 4 media houses at a time. So you can share that risk. Ingredients for successful collaboration. I advise, based on experience, that you should define the scope. So you don't collaborate on everything, anything. When you have reasons to collaborate, define the scope so that people can come together for a short time and focus on that work and then go back to their regular work. You need a trusted driver. Now, collaboration work on driving. Jeff is going to speak soon. And I admire Jeff so much because he has driven the platform that he created. You need somebody who is trusted, who people do not feel will use any of them, who can drive the process. I have done this with my organization. And when you have a trusted driver, you go far because people trust the driver. They are going to sacrifice a lot for the group. You need to engage people who are passionate and who share your values. So people need to believe in what you want to do, and they need to be able to commit to it to make it happen. You need to find complementary skills. So what skills do I have that the other person needs? Or what skills don't I have that I'm looking for? Find people with complementary skills so that your collaboration can be successful. And then you need to agree. What are the rules of engagement? What are the timelines? How are we going to do this? Who is doing what? How will we carry it out? For the project I mentioned, for instance, we had a timeline and we knew who was publishing what by what date, and we communicated it. So you need to have this rule of engagement right from the beginning. The prize, I talk about the prize and the price for collaboration. You may be globally famous, but at the same time, you may never be seen because you might just be somebody who is not known. Our organization has done so many projects, but not every of those projects has our name on them. So you need to be able to appreciate that, yes, you can become famous, but you might also not be known. In these times of COVID, we see more than ever before that we do need to collaborate and we cannot work alone. Individually, I will say that we are good, but collectively, we can become great. And this is why collaboration is important for us all. Thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll give the floor to Jeff to go ahead.
Thank you very much, Motunrayo, for that tremendous overview and examples of the kind of collaborative process and some really wonderful projects. I just wanted to start by expressing gratitude at being part of the panel. I wanted to make sure that I acknowledged WITS and the AIJC. It's a very different year, as Motunrayo was just alluding to, because of COVID. So there's been all kinds of adjustments, and Olga and Seppo and the whole team have worked very hard to bring us all together. So I wanted to thank them. I wanted to make sure I acknowledge Motunrayo for the invitation and kind of convening and conceiving of the panel, her leadership, and Motunrayo is actually a board member on CCIJ, so I'm very grateful to Motunrayo. It's lovely to meet Sharon and Peter and experience their collegiality. And on the conversation right now, we have longer standing members of our community like David Dembele, who just published our first story with Jacques Ngor-Sarr about the Falemé River in French and English. We had our interview with him on our podcast produced by Paul McNally of Volume, who's also a member of our community. We have newer members of our community like Carolyn Lunga and Gabriel Ogunjobi, and then old friends like Bridget Reed, Itzhak Minar, and Shireen Rubenstein. So I'm just very happy to be with people who I know, and then of course with everybody else for attending. And before I get into my comments about collaboration, which is really the focus of our panel, I just wanted to take a second and just acknowledge what's happening in Nigeria at this moment and the courage of the people involved in the nationwide protests against SARS and really extending even beyond that now, using their constitutionally guaranteed rights of freedom of speech, assembly, movement, and dignity in urging the nation to be true to its lofty promises articulated in the 1999 Constitution. I wanted to be clear about the brutality of the governmental response and the challenges of misinformation that people in that country are confronting. And as Motunrayo was saying, for us at CCIJ, part of collaboration is supporting our colleagues during very difficult times. And this is one of them in Nigeria. And so I just want to make sure that before I talk about our work at CCIJ, that I just acknowledge that that's what's happening in Nigeria. Just very briefly about myself, I'm a journalist and a journalism civil discourse professor and a convener of communities. I'm a career switcher. I was in education for 15 years who went into journalism to tell stories that wouldn't otherwise be told and that had the possibility of sparking change. And I wanted to get into the focus on collaboration by just talking about who we are at CCIJ. So now I will share my screen for just a minute. Here we go. Okay. So we are the Center for Collaborative Investigative Journalism. So I remember when Motunrayo and I spoke about her potentially serving on the board, she mentioned, oh, collaborative is in the name. I really like that. And that's really the core of who we are. So this is our website. that John Myers, our web designer, put together. And as you can see, we have a revolving gallery of very powerful photos. And a big part of our community is bringing together visual, data, and investigative reporters and colleagues as equal partners from the beginning of the project to carry out ongoing investigations on key global issues. And so I'll just go down a little bit on our page. And we are very grounded in the African Investigative Journalism Conference. Our first project here, Gaming the Lottery, which I'll just bring up for a second. This is a global investigation into the international lottery industry. And it really began in 2016 at the AIJC. Excuse me, a number of us got together, we had a couple bottles of wine, and we said, hey, let's not just talk about one lottery, but let's really bring out the workings of the entire system. And so as you can see, we have still very strong work going. In fact, Raymond Joseph, who's a key person on the South African component today, was planning to be on this call, but there's some parliamentary hearings about replacing the National Lotteries Commission chairman. So South Africa, Mali, that's where David Dembele and I met, and David did a very important story about the lottery and malfeasance and the use of the ruling political party to take funds that had been designated for the people and use them for their own benefit. We had stories in the United States, Bolivia, and Switzerland. So this was our first project, and we then came back and presented it at the 2017 Global Investigative Journalism Conference, which was held also at WITS. And through that, we then got invited to apply for what became seed funding, kind of a planning grant from the Open Society Foundation that then later led to our second project, which is ongoing now. The lottery project is still going, but H2O Fail. And so we launched that project in 2018. A number of the people on the call were there at that meeting, and we brought together people from all over the continent. And the focus of this investigation is really looking at in 2010, the United Nations declared access to clean water to be a universal right that was essential to the enjoyment of all other rights. But at the same time, close to 1 billion people across the planet do not have that access. And so we launched the investigation into that failure. And so the project is called H2O Fail. So here is a story that just came out from Tajikistan yesterday. It's our 11th country. We reported on this with the investigation last year. And this investigation was supported by Money Trail. And Lisa Kinyime from Nigeria, who was with Money Trail at the time, we met her at the African Investigative Journalism Conference. So I really encourage folks to think about this gathering as an opportunity for folks to really network and get together. Here's a story about Lesotho that just came out, a collaboration between Billy Ntaote of Lesotho and Rona Meyer from Nigeria, who lives in Germany. Here is Jacques Ngorsa's story in English. And then here is David's story in English. And actually, I'll call up David's story in French, because Roxanne Joseph, who's another member of our community, just does a beautiful job laying out the story and very powerfully representing it. So here you see, these are the images, the image that David spoke, and here's our story in French. And it's really about the water pollution on both sides of the river and the consequences. So that's kind of where we started. I just wanted to mention that in addition to working together on the stories, we have a strong commitment to share not just the work that we do, but also the data that we gather. So with the H2O Fail project, DAL has started to scrape water articles, and there's a database of about 800 water articles that can be from 12 countries that can be searched by country, by theme. So we really believe in sharing that work. Adi and Ray did a similar project in 2017, 2018, about scraping the records of the lottery recipients in South Africa, putting that into a publicly available tool, using it to do training with community journalists, and then also share with the public. So we really believe in that transparency and sharing and collaborating in different ways. And that speaks to the vision that Moten Raya was articulating in the Rush project of thinking of broadly about who collaboration is, internal within the team, external with other journalism colleagues, but then also in ethically and appropriate ways, disciplinary appropriate ways with the public as well. I just wanted to talk briefly about Moten Raya had a lovely overview, but in terms of the benefits and challenges, that was part of the charge to talk about both. So the benefits are that it can really expand in many different ways: your network, your perspective, your audience, your protection, your impact. The challenges can be, it can be a lot of work. And then, if, sometimes if the partnerships don't go well, you run that challenge of what does it mean reputationally and kind of the quality of the work. That's very important to watch that. And then, as Moten Raya alluded to, some people feel it runs counter to the competitive ethos. In my perspective, it's worth it, but I do think it is worth putting on the table that it is work, and you do have to kind of think a little bit differently. The last thing I just wanted to share from my initial portion is just some tips that I found are helpful. And one is, I think it's really important, as Moten Raya was talking about, to not only define the scope, but to really start small and be very transparent, to build trust among the partners and build an understanding of how everybody works and what the work culture is, how different people operate. So really start small, build that trust, and try and over deliver, but start discreet. The second is establish a candid culture that includes both ongoing debriefing and celebration. That it's a hard thing to do, to collaborate, but when you do it, and it goes well, it's very important to acknowledge and celebrate each of those steps, but very important to kind of assume, not that everything will go well, but that you will run into bumps and bruises. And so how do you talk about those, and how do you establish a framework to navigate them together? Individually, I think it's very important to maintain a space for reflection so that you can think about how is this working? What is going well on our end? What is going well on the other end? What ways can we then take our reflections and then fold that into this candid culture and dialogue? And the other thing is, I would say, I think it's very important to, as soon as you identify that there's some challenge, address them. And I find, as much as we all like email or WhatsApp or whatever the forum is, I find it's really good to just get on the phone, make a call. It seems like it can take you a little bit longer, but I think the importance of establishing that trust, of confronting the issue right away and having that human connection, I think that's actually outstrips the value of kind of doing it quickly through an email. So I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute. I am going to then just put my email in the chat. And I would say my final thought would be, have fun, because I feel very enriched and thrilled by the community that we've built, by the way in which, and I want to be very specific that coming from the United States, that this isn't for everybody in African journalists, but many, many African journalists and colleagues and friends with whom we have the privilege and honor to work already had pretty challenging circumstances in terms of resources and press freedoms and work environments before COVID. And then how people have rallied and responded during COVID and hanging in there. I remember David has just commented in the chat, but I remember talking vividly with David and saying, we don't have money for you for medical expenses. Please make sure that you are taking care of yourself. Please make sure that you don't do the investigation and put yourself at risk. And David and Jacques were very creative and resourceful about how they responded and got the reporting done. So it is work, it is hard, but I'm very honored and humbled and inspired by the work that we do together. And as I said, it is a lot of fun. So why don't I stop there to be mindful of everybody's time and then either to Sharon or Peter, and then we'll go into the dialogue. Thank you so much.
Very quickly, a lot has happened in some few minutes. We've learned from Turai Alaka, the CEO of the Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism, and Jeff, who is the founder of the Executive Director of the Center for Collaborative Investigative Journalism. Jeff has been able to explain to us the several challenges that has been faced in the journalism sector, especially as regards collaborations, the fears, and lots more. Very quickly, we'll move to Peter for him to give us his example, to share examples with us. As from findings, Peter is a co-founder of African Center for Media Excellence. He has worked as the group training editor of the Nation Media Group, East Africa's biggest multimedia company. He is a lecturer, he is a trainer, and he has collaboration with various international organizations. Dr. Peter, you have the floor to share insights on your experience as a former reporter, political editor, now a political columnist. What do you have to say about the need for collaborative journalism?
Thanks, Sharon, and greetings everybody from Kampala. It is about to rain where I am. Thank you, Vits Journalism, and Anton and Mtunrayo for the invitation to this session. I want to also join Jeff and others to condemn the state-inspired violence in Nigeria. Very quickly, I'll talk about ACME, the African Center for Media Excellence. We are a media support organization that champions journalistic excellence and supports the media in Africa to become and remain reliable and credible sources of information, effective watchdogs, and vibrant forums for public debate. We also promote media literacy in Africa, and we advocate, promote, and defend press freedom and freedom of expression. We deliver our mission mainly through the following activities, and I'll mention them very quickly. We do mid-career training for journalists. We do media literacy training for civil society and others, including government entities. We do media monitoring and research. We host excellence awards for journalists. We do investigative reporting grants for journalists. We convene public dialogues, workshops, and symposia. We run an active online operation, which has a website and online resource center where we share lots of information, including story ideas and backgrounders and explainers for both journalists, civil society, and the public. And finally, we do freedom of expression advocacy. Now, when it comes to collaborative projects, I must say we have not attracted as much interest in the applications for our reporting grants in this area. But I guess we haven't put in as much emphasis on this as perhaps is required. So what I want to do is to share with you examples of collaborative projects from Uganda and the region, and some lessons I've learned from those stories. I spoke to a number of journalists who have been involved in these stories, including Solomon Serwanja of NBS TV in Kampala, Lydia Namobiru of Open Democracy Africa, and Tabu Tajira of the Nation Media Group, and Jeff Mbanga of the Observer. Jeff, you can go ahead, sorry, Shepo, you can go ahead and show the examples, my slide with the examples. Good. So those are, I've just picked 6 out of very many examples, and I must thank my friend Benon Oluka from GIJN for helping me to get some of the links, which I will share in the chat with you. The first story there is, a finance uncovered investigation. You have another one from the Observer. I think they collaborated with Finance Uncovered, and both of them are talking about illicit financial flows, really. And I think these two, Observer and Finance Uncovered, and their other partners, deserve a lot of credit for simplifying, making accessible a fairly complex story that actually has a lot of implications on the kind of money that Uganda and other countries in Africa are losing to these multinationals. There's also a story on NBS and BBC, that talked about stealing from the sick. It is an award-winning undercover investigation on how medicines from our government's, National Drug Authority ended up in private pharmacies, stolen by both officials from the authority and a few other government collaborators. Quite a powerful story too. We have the story from the BBC Africa Eye documentary. It is Gamblers Like Me, The Dark Side of Sports Betting, which is a fairly recent industry in Uganda, sports betting. It is a nascent industry in Uganda, and I think the BBC Eye documentary, did quite a wonderful job telling this story, again, in an accessible way. No wonder that, they have received lots of awards and recognition for that story. Then you have Nation Africa, talking about toxic dam, the poisons killing Lake Victoria. The Nation Media Group works in Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania, among other countries in the region. And this story was the collaboration of their platforms across, East Africa, and it focused on Africa's largest, lake. Then you have Vision Group and others are supported by the Pulitzer Center on Crisis Reporting, who did a wonderful piece again on the River Nile called Sucked Dry. That too, I think, brings attention to lots of recent developments that have seen foreign investors acquiring very big chunks of, land in the Nile Basin, and in the process displacing communities and thousands of people. Now, what have we learned from these projects that I've shared? One is that media owners and vision bearers must have an interest in good journalism. The other one is that it helps when there is a central organization or individual coordinating the collaboration. In this case, for instance, we have Finance Uncovered, working with several African journalists and some from elsewhere to tell these stories about illicit financial flows. It also helps, to understand that collaborative investigative journalism does not come cheap. We must be willing to invest in it, as media houses have to invest in it. The other thing I have learned from my conversations with the journalists is that collaborative projects are a great learning opportunity for the journalists involved. And I think both Jeff and Motunrayo have talked about this at length. I won't go much into details. But also, as Motunrayo said, such projects offer security in numbers, they kind of spread the risk around, or safety in numbers, as it were. We have also learned that collaborative investigative projects can be quite time consuming, but also journalists require integrity and discipline to work in such big teams. I have been told about some infighting in some of the projects at the beginning, and how, of course, finally, over time, because of their focus and integrity, I think they all are able to come together and deliver on these stories. Some of the challenges I want to mention very quickly, of course, include resources or money, to be very specific. Without money, you cannot have big investigative projects like the examples I've given over there. I think two of the examples I've shared cost between $20,000 for one of them and $25,000 and $40,000 for the other, the BBC, Eye documentary on stealing from the sick. So these are fairly expensive projects. You have got to pull resources together to be able to, do them. Also, competition among other, media houses has been mentioned. It kind of undermines, creates some kind of underappreciation of the value of collaboration. Some of these projects can be quite risky. The lack of vision by media owners contributes. I can tell you, for instance, that Nation Africa, which did the story on Lake Victoria, has the strong backing in terms of vision of the other Khan, who is the majority shareholder in the Nation Media Group. They are able to invest money in Africa projects, partly because of the vision by the majority shareholder, and partly because, of course, he's very, very passionate about covering Africa. So you need vision bearers. Of course, they can do better, but I mean, at least you know that they have the backing of the major stakeholder. And then, of course, we also have learned that the low levels of commissioning of such projects in the region denies very many young journalists learning opportunities, you know, because some of these things can best be learned when you are doing. Now, finally, let me just talk very quickly about what can be done to improve work in this area. I've already mentioned the fact that media owners and media managers need to have a bigger vision that sees the benefits of collaboration. You know, they should look at collaboration as strengthening rather than weakening their brands. You know, then media houses, of course, must inevitably pool resources and support the idea of joint publication, you know, co-publishing. You know, journalists in the region, you know, must start mapping out potential partners, and this not necessarily be only media houses. Civil society organizations also offer potential for partnership with media houses in some of these projects. Our journalists should recognize that collaboration requires patience and perseverance, you know, and media houses should, I think, finally support their journalists, however small, to become specialists in some of those key areas required to pull off these kinds of projects. I'm thinking of areas such as data journalism, you know, or even finance reporting, knowledge in areas like the environment, you know, science and technology, and so on and so forth. They need to improve both their skills and knowledge to be able to understand the issues and tell compelling stories about them. I thank you, and I will share my email address in the chat and the links to these stories if Shepa hasn't done that already. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peter, for the insights that you've given to us. Of course, the need for media organizations to have a strong vision cannot be overemphasized. Very quickly, we'll go to the question and answer segment. And before we do the question and answer segment, I would like to highlight what the three panelists have spoken about. Muturai Alaka was able to expatiate on the gains of collaborative journalism, and Jacques was able to expatiate on the gains of collaborative journalism as a lecturer and as someone that is a mentor to so many youths. And for Dr. Peter, he was able to highlight the gains, the experience in East Africa of towards engaging journalists from different media organizations. Because generally, when we look at the challenges that media organizations might be faced with, we are aware that many media organizations are scared of competition. And of course, from research by so many international organizations, it's been learned that not just for good journalism alone is the essence of collaborative journalism. It's also important a station can lose a reporter. How do they sustain if they're on a particular project? According to research, it also says that it helps people hold themselves accountable. And the time frame of doing a project or an investigative story will be quite minimal towards ensuring that you get the story out there to ensure that there is impact. So very quickly, we would like to ask Muturai Alaka, how have you been able to manage competition, in quotes, between media organizations towards ensuring that projects like for example, the electricity story that was done some couple of years back, how have you been able to manage that these media organizations work together for a common purpose?
Okay, it is the defining what we came together to do in the first instance. So electricity is something that troubles us as Nigerians. And so, of course, there's that shared interest in what can we do, what else can we do to report about this to bring change. So definitely, I talked about scope. We didn't do it forever. We did it for about 8 weeks, which included the time for training, the time for pitching the stories, refining the ideas, and publishing. I think eventually we ended up using about 12 weeks. Again, the reporters were not working every day. So you are able to maintain your individuality as organizations, but at the same time, we come together for this common purpose of doing a big report on a particular subject, this time around electricity. So definitely we're not minimizing the fact that reporters or media houses are going to have the same big markets. Of course, we can also debate that because our audiences are different, even though there are intersections between our audiences, depending on your style of writing and your style of reporting. There are certain audiences you have that another media house would not have. So there are intersections all the same, but it is to define the scope in terms of the issue, the time, and what each person is bringing on the table in such a way that Jeff mentioned, it is true, it is a lot of hard work, but in such a way that people are not spent collaborating so much that they don't have any strength to do their own work. So to appreciate their individuality also. So we did not, for this particular one, we asked each media house, they had a team of 2 in their own media house, so they could work together as a team within their media house, but other people then made inputs to the story, and whenever they published, other parts of the other members of the team simultaneously published. So to define the scope well and to have roles well explained and duration limited so that we have time to be our individual selves even while we come together to do great work.
Okay, thank you very much, Motsurayo. I'll move on to Jeff. I'm aware that you're a great teacher and you've been a mentor to so many students at the postgraduate or degree level. What would be your take home for, what would be your advice for the young journalists? Because I'm aware that we have this category of people also joining us live on this virtual conference. What would be your message to them towards ensuring that they just don't stand alone, but they collaborate to win more?
Well, thank you very much, Sharon, for your kind words. And I also wanted to make sure that I mentioned that Carolyn Raffaelli on the line, and she's a dear and longtime friend who has done tremendous work at the Vits Justice Project, which has really saved people's lives. I just didn't see when I was going through the list of people who are in our community who are there. So I just want to mention that. But I did want to say that we at CCIJ, and there's a question also about how do freelancers get involved. Sure. We at CCIJ very much try to work with and learn from folks working in underserved communities. And we really try to work with independent journalists as well as people at established media houses. And some of the young journalists that you mentioned, Sharon, are in that category. And so part of what we do around the issue of resources is I send out a weekly update in which occasionally we are able to provide our own resources. Some of the work that we did in Southern Africa was from the OSISA, Open Society Initiative for Southern Africa. The work that David did that I showed before was from Open Society Foundation. So sometimes we have those opportunities. Other times we kind of keep our eye out, and so we're able to share funding opportunities for people. So I just wanted to mention that piece of it. In terms of the younger journalists, my sense is that a lot of the younger journalists come from quite a collaborative framework. And so often we are learning from them in terms of how they think. And in fact, I would say that another part of our work that we're developing is trying to think creatively about distribution. And so through that, very specifically looking at social media and preserving original content for social media rather than only putting out content that's been published and then pushing it. And also Rona really was quite visionary. And again, Rona and I met at the AIJC a couple of years ago. She was our social media leader, and now she's on our advisory board. But Rona really talking about trying to distribute information in a culturally sensitive way. So for example, Pidgin in Nigeria, Zulu in South Africa, English in other areas, French for folks like David who are in West Africa. So I think that what I would say is that I think a lot of the younger journalists that we work with don't come necessarily with this framework of I have to hold on to what I have and not work on my own. They come from, often, I don't get overly general, but come from kind of a collaborative framework. And so I would just encourage them to really think about each opportunity that they're in and the chance to build some of those ongoing connections, which can expand their possibilities. So for me, very specifically in our community, the AIJC has been that place where we meet people, you network, you get the cards, you follow up, and then you sort of learn together about what those opportunities might be. And I guess the last thing I'd just say very quickly is that I really liked what Motunrayo said about thinking of collaboration as a number of different possibilities. So sometimes it could even just be you tweet one person's work and they tweet your work. And that's sort of, you start
That's another form
there.
of collaboration.
And then you build to, well, maybe we make phone calls or share reporting that we've done. And then maybe that goes well. And then you say, maybe we translate each other's work. And then you say, maybe we go for a grant together. So I guess I would say, don't think of collaboration as this undifferentiated mass, but a lot of different ways that you can think about it. And really, I guess, finally, the last thing really quickly, sorry, but just say, trust your instincts about how things are going. So I'll stop there.
Okay, Dr. Peter, there's a question from Lekol Tufodori, Media Career Development Network, that says, how can media houses balance the challenge of the need to compete and collaborate? Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Sharon, and thanks for that question. I don't see any contradiction actually between, competition and collaboration. We have seen examples. I mean, when the BBC, for instance, runs stories that have been run by different media houses on the continent, I mean, everybody is happy. You know, the local TV stations here that have collaborated with the BBC get audiences, better audiences. The BBC too gets to have a wider, audience of African, viewers or listeners. So I don't actually see contradiction. And I think the second thing that is related to that is the fact that investing in journalism, in collaborations and other forms of investigative, journalism is not actually necessarily going to be a bad business decision, because very many media owners, in my view, are short-sighted in our part of the world, at least. They seem to think that putting all this money in good journalism is a loss maker. No, it can actually make you even more money. And there are examples of that. I think the New York Times in recent months and years, has shown us that, investing in quality journalism can actually, bring you even more revenue. So yeah, those two, I think, for me, are quite critical.
Thank you.
Very quickly, it's about 3 minutes before we wrap up. What everyone's comments in 30 seconds towards ensuring that good journalism prevail with collaboration?
I'll just also, somebody mentioned, I'll answer that quickly, Sharon, but there's a question about freelancers getting involved in collaboration. I think that freelancers are so free that it is easier even for them to get involved in collaborations, because you're not tied to particular organizations. So the restrictions that other individual journalists have, a lot of them you don't have, because you just need to speak to the media house and get them to agree on the work that you're doing. So you are more flexible. Just to answer that question, I would say on my part, all of those great things I've said about collaboration are true. But when you're doing investigative reporting, it is important that you get people who can understand the word confidentiality and who are going to stick to the rules of confidentiality. You don't want to be investigating something and then you have a mole in the team, and whatever you are investigating or what you want to reveal, somebody acts it before it is the time. So it is important that you get people who share. I mentioned values generally, but that value of confidentiality and trust is very important, so that team members keep to the rules and they follow exactly what we've decided to do.
Okay, very quickly, Dr. Peter, in less than 30 seconds, so we have 30 seconds to wrap up.
Every journalist I've spoken to about collaborative, investigative journalism has mentioned to me how it actually is a great learning opportunity. There's no better on-the-job training than being involved in projects that involve, journalists from different parts of the world or different countries on the continent. So I think that I would encourage many more journalists to broaden their, networks and their vision by, doing this kind of projects with others. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity, and I'm very grateful to be part of the panel. And I really see this as the beginning and continuation of an ongoing discussion. I've left my email in the chat, jk.lowenstein@ccij.io. And I definitely think that collaboration has a number of challenges with it, but as we've talked about, there's a lot of benefits that come from it. And at this moment, I think it's really a necessary way of how we think about who we are as journalists and as people who are trying to share accurate information in the world at a time of tremendous efforts to misinform and disinform and attacking the journalists. We really need to be in that space in a bunch of different ways. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, every facilitator towards the comments towards ending police brutality in Nigeria. We do appreciate your voice at this point in time, and we are very optimistic that everything would be fine in Nigeria and we shall overcome police brutality, and of course, good journalism will prevail. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this session. We do appreciate and we are optimistic that good journalism will thrive, and we expect more collaborations to come out from this session that's been held virtually.